Welcome to Sparking Success with Aaron Opalewski. Aaron brings you conversations that spark innovation, cultivate leadership skills, and pave the way for your business success. In each episode, we delve into the dynamic world of business and leadership, exploring strategies, insights, and success stories that fuel your professional journey.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Sparking Success. Today we have my friend Syed Ahmed with us, and he's in studio. Welcome, Syed. How are you today?
I'm great. Thanks for having me in.
Thanks for coming in. Syed and I have been friends now for, I believe it's a little over 7 years. And it's crazy to think it's been 7 years, but Syed's the owner and founder of Platinum Motor Cars and also Out of Office Garage. And that's how, we initially met. Is I was looking for a car, and Syed helped me out. I'm sure we'll get into that story, but welcome, man. Thanks for
having me.
Thanks for coming in.
It's cool to see what you've built grow into even having this and being a part of it.
Yeah, we were talking about it, and just everything we got in the studio here, it's EJ. That's really put it together, and it's his vision, and he brought it to life. So I'm grateful for him, and it's fun, and feel blessed that we get to do this. So,
well, the studio space is awesome. The whole office space is awesome, and I know I've watched the story about how you used to look at this building, so it's cool to see you in the building and have it be your office.
Yeah, thanks, man. I figure we start, just love to hear. I know a little bit about it, but if you don't mind, share with the audience on the story of how Platinum Motor Cars became a company, and we'll take it from there.
Yeah, sure. My whole life, as far back as I can remember, I've been a total car guy, from back to when I was a little kid. And my dad was an engineer at Chrysler, and so from growing up and pointing at cars and be like, "Dad, check that out," and he's like, "No, we can't do that. We got to be driving a Chrysler." I was like, "Okay, I don't ever want to do anything in the car space. I just want that to be my hobby." So, after school, I actually went in the mortgage space and learned a lot, met a lot of people, met my wife, but just realized it wasn't really for me. Didn't enjoy it. I was not feeling fulfilled. I was making money, but that was about it. So. Yeah. Stepped out of that and had no idea what I was going to do. My parents were freaking out. It was in the middle of the recession.
So was that 2009?
Yeah, it was 2009. I left. Yeah. No plan. I was partner in a valet parking company, so I had income, but I just bought a condo in Birmingham, and my mom was like, "What are you doing? You just bought this place. You just quit your job." And I'm like, I can't do it anymore. I don't know what I'm going to do. And at the time, a super close friend and mentor of mine, Steve Piazza, calls me up, and he goes, "What are you going to do?" And I'm like, "I don't know." He's like, "Well, what are you doing right now?" I'm like, "I'm floating." And he's like, what do you mean? And I was on a friend's boat in the middle of a lake. And we joked that everyone didn't have a job that summer. So we were all just always at this one buddy's house, on a lake, with really no idea what we were going to do. So he called me every week for a couple of weeks. And on the third week, and he's like, "No, this doesn't work. You need a plan." I hung up with him, and the next call I got was from somebody who was like, "Hey, Piazza told me to give you a call and you could help me with a car." And I was like, "What?" And so I helped that person. Someone else called, and someone else called, and I called him back. I'm like, "What are you doing?" And he's like, "Well, cars are your gift. So until you figure out what you're doing, you can just help people with cars."
Yeah.
So a couple months went by, and a friend of mine that actually works at the Porsche Audi dealer in Birmingham calls me up, and he was just like, "Hey, now that you're in the car business, do you want to start buying our trades?" And I was like, "I'm not in the car business." He's like, "Dude, you referred more deals in here last month than our top sales guy." And I was like, maybe I am in the car business. I don't even know. So I bought a few trades, lost a bunch of money, realized that wasn't how that worked, and I had to change that approach. And 24,000 cars later, here we are. So it was not a planned way to go. Probably the first 5 years I was in the car business, my mom kept being like, "When are you going to get another job? When are you going to get another job?" And I just finally, I was like, I think I kind of figured out what I'm doing. And we're very fortunate for it. We've met, obviously, incredible people like yourself, and a lot of some of our closest friends have come from it. And, like you had touched on Out of Office, we've turned it into building a community. Platinum, we always prided ourselves in not necessarily trying to sell a car as much as trying to get a client. Even our first interaction, I remember you were looking at the Lamborghini Huracan.
Yep.
honestly, I remember the Huracan part more, and I didn't sell you that. I think the first car I sold you was either a Mercedes GLE or a Mercedes S Coupe.
First one was the S.
It was a green S Coupe.
So I share this story with our sales team a lot. Like, I'm a big proponent on, like, look, facts tell, but stories sell.
Right.
But the story has got to be genuine. And, you just heard Syed say that they're more focused. They're not so much focused on selling a car. What I heard, I don't know that you said this exactly, but it's building a relationship. And a lot of, we interview people. We're, out at events. Like, I'm in a speaking event this week, and I'm not knocking any of those people, right? But, like, there's some people in, like, the personal development space that will talk a big game, but they don't back it up. They don't live what they say. And I can tell you, like, I'm going to share the story in a second, but it's all over. What Syed just said is so true. Like, that's how they grow their business. That's why we're sitting here today, and we formed this friendship. I was looking. I don't even think I knew I wanted a Huracan. I'm just like, Syed, I want a Lamborghini. You're like, okay, like hold on. And, we went through it all, and, what happened, there's so many good sales lessons in this, but there was an opportunity to buy one at another, local dealership. And not only did you tell me I should do that, but which, he didn't make any money, from that. If anything, he was, burning his time, right? Like up front. But not only did he say you should do that, you helped me negotiate like where the price point should be at and why. And that worked. And I bought that car. So that first interaction we had, you didn't have to do that. You could have just not called me back or wrote me off or like been like, okay, yeah, and then screw it. But not only did you tell me like, yeah, you should do that, and you didn't get upset about it, you went above and beyond and helped me with where the price point should be and why. And that stuck with me. Like, I'm like, wow, like that's amazing. And, as you said, you talked about 2 of the cars, but I believe we're at 1, 2, 3, 4 cars that we've bought, from you, and then 1, 2, 3, or maybe 4 that we sold to you, and I think you've resold. So that's like 7 or 8 transactions, and all started with just going the extra mile for someone who's not even a client yet, and helping them figure out how to, make a good, buying decision. So that's amazing, dude. But that's not just like words. Like, I have a personal experience with you that to know that's true. And I just think that's cool. And I share that story with our sales team like all the time.
Well, thanks. And yeah, I tell our guys all the time, I don't actually ever care if I sell you a car. Like, that's never my focus. Like, I just want to honestly gain you or anyone as a client by giving you the right advice. There's so many places you walk in the door and they're going to just try to hammer you into whatever's sitting there because that's what's there, right? Like, SWAT, like it's a sales term, sell what's available today. And I'm always like, like, sure, that works and that gets a deal, but that person never trusts you. That person doesn't necessarily ultimately feel like you truly took care of them. And I have certain clients of mine that I jokingly say I spend more time talking them out of stuff
Sure.
than I do letting them transact. Because I watch them and I'm like, I had a conversation with a guy last night. He's on his like 8th Ford Raptor. And he's a guy that I don't sell many cars to, but I buy a lot of cars from. So him buying cars is in my best interest.
Yeah, because then he's going to come to you to resell it, basically.
But then I just
when
watch
he's on
him
his,
and
like,
I
20th
feel
Raptor.
right, and I'm like, dude, what are you doing? Like, literally, like this is the 3rd Raptor in 90 days. And he's like, no, like I got the Denali truck in the seat, and I'm like, just can we like stop for a second and take a breath and like figure out what you're actually trying to do, so we don't have to keep doing this. He's like, you sound like my wife. I'm like, she's probably right too. Like, let's sort it out. But yeah, going back to that first transaction. I just remember you're young now. You were really young and in a good way. And I remember being like, holy shit, this is awesome. This dude's sitting in front of me and he's about to buy these 2 really special cars. And we, on the Lamborghini part of it in particular, you were like, well, what do you have? Like this, that. They have this perfect one that I really like there. And I said, well, if that's the perfect one you really like, then that's the one you should buy. And I remember you kind of being confused and like literally being like from them. And I'm like, yeah, dude, if that's the one, then buy the one. Like I tell people all the time, we don't sell you anything you need, to be honest, to anyone.
Mm-hmm.
So you got to actually love what you're buying. Like we're not selling the family minivan. Like we're not helping anyone get to work. Like
sure,
we're selling you something that you should really truly love. And if you don't, then we'll get you what you truly love instead of just putting you in something.
Well, that's I know one from seeing the community you've built, which we'll segue into that in a minute. But like my story of repeat business and a relationship that's lasted for 7 years and will continue on. I'm not the only one, and what Syed, does extremely well is, and he won't even necessarily say it this way, or maybe you do, but I haven't heard it yet. But you're focused on the lifetime value of a relationship. And maybe it's not even that, it's just the relationship in and of itself. But the product of that is huge LTV on what the client relationship can be, because it's not a one sale, push this through, much margin as we can make on this one sale, make the person feel horrible and we never see him again because they had a bad experience. It's like the nemesis of that. It's like almost like that's your guy's enemy, is like we want to be the exact opposite of that. We want people to have a good experience, to build a relationship with us, to trust us. And what do you know? They come back again and again and again. And, I could say, hey, tell me about other stories like that, right? But like, let's go into what you built with Out of Office, because you have built an amazing community, and it stems from what we're talking about right now. One transaction at a time, one relationship at a time, just doing the right thing and building rapport and trust with people. And look what it's turned into with what you guys put together. It's really special. If you're not in the area, you should check them out on social, but they put events together that are just, they're top notch.
So Out of Office was another thing. It's kind of funny to admit that sort of happened by mistake. We've got 2 locations in Birmingham, or we had 2 locations in Birmingham. We have the showroom right off of Woodward, yep. And then we had a warehouse location on one of the side streets. And I was just like, man, I'm just paying rent everywhere. Like I would just love to own something. And
yeah,
I had all but given up looking, honestly, because like nothing really comes available, or it all just kind of goes off market.
Especially in that area.
Yeah, and so it was the middle of COVID. I think we were technically shut down at this point for not being an essential business in the state of Michigan. And a client that we'd interacted with one time calls me up, and he's like, hey, do you want to buy a building? And I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, this timing literally couldn't be worse. Like, we have no money. Like, I'm like, sure, but I'm kind of specific. Like, I'm not in the real estate game. Like, and if I'd buy a building, it has to be in a specific area. And he's like, well, where does it have to be? And I kind of gave him some parameters. And he's like, well, it's east of that. And I'm like, I know this sounds crazy, but like, I can't be east of that. Like, my community is like this like little pocket bubble, and I really need to be in that bubble. And he tells me where it's at. I go, oh, actually, that actually counts, because it was at the end of Cole Street, and I had given him outer border of Eaton, which really has all these arteries off of it. And I'm like, yeah, no, that works. And he's like, okay, well, do you want to see the space? And I'm like, sure. So he puts me in touch with this guy. And the story was, it was 2 partners, and the one partner, who was the money partner, wanted to retire.
Okay.
In order for her to retire, the operator basically had to sell this building to buy her out.
Got it. Yep.
So I remember telling Erica, I'm like, I'm going to go look at this building. And she's like, for what? Like, we can't buy it.
I'm just picturing Erica.
Yeah.
Erica's awesome, by the way. We're
very yin and yang.
She's
and Erica
amazing.
knows her really well.
She definitely is she keeps things moving.
She's the glue, for sure. I'm pure chaos. I come in like a tornado, and then Erica comes in, and she's like, all right, we got to put all this back together. I'll let you keep
telling the story, but I'm just imagining her face at that point.
You're imagining it exactly right. So she didn't even come with me to see it the first time. She's like, I don't need to see it. Like, you go see it. I'm like, okay. So I go to this building, and I walk in, and it's just like something. Sometimes the perfect things happen when you're not looking for it.
Yeah.
So I go, the location's perfect. I walk in. They'd been there for like 50 years. I walk in the back, and it's completely free span. There isn't a beam anywhere in the building, which when you're moving a bunch of cars around, you don't necessarily want a bunch of obstacles.
Yeah.
And the ceilings are tall, and I'm like, of course this is available right now, right? Like,
Like, this is perfect.
yeah. So talk to the guy. His name's Keith. And I'm like, listen, what do you want for this? He's like, well, I'm, about to list it with a broker. I'm like, dude, I know I'm in sales, but I'm not a sales guy. Like, just what do you want to do?
Level with me.
And so he kind of gave me a number, and I called a friend of mine who's in commercial real estate, who's a client and a good friend. And I said, what do you think?
Yeah.
And he was just like, stealing it would be this. A great buy would be this. And I said, I don't need to steal it. I'm just paying money on rent every month. Like, I just need to own it if it can make sense for me.
Yeah, and I don't want to get like smoked on it.
Yeah. So I called the guy back, and I made him an offer, and it was like a very kind of like odd, specific number. And he just like paused, and he was like, where'd you come up with that number? And I was like, well, I figure if you list it with a broker, you're going to sell it for this, and you're going to pay this much in fees.
Yeah.
And so this is kind of where you probably want to be, and this is where I think is reasonable, and I'll be a quick transaction. I'm going to get an inspection, and that's going to be more just to find out if it's good or bad. I'm not renegotiating you. We're either closing at this number or we're not closing,
Sure.
depending on the inspection. And he goes, okay, deal. Like the next day, I start getting offered the building by brokers, and I'm like, oh shit, like I'm screwed. Like, somebody got in his ear. He thinks he's going to get more money. And he was a really religious guy. And I called, I knew that from my first meeting with him. And I call him up. I said, I don't want you to take offense to this, because I kind of feel like, you're a guy whose word is his word, and I'm the same way. But I'm getting offered the building by other people. I just, I don't even have we had nothing other than a handshake at this point. Like,
Sure.
I told my attorney, I'm like, hey, I need to draft up some stuff.
Yeah.
And he was working
So
on
you're
it.
starting to spend some money on it.
Yeah.
And then you're like, wait a
And-
minute, why am I getting called on this from other people?
So he calls me back, and he's like, yeah, it's yours, dude. Like, no one else is getting the building. Like, that's not how I roll. So I'm like, okay, great. So we, go forward, fast forward, we close on the building. We start renovating the building, and originally the building was supposed to be kind of like our corporate office and a warehouse.
Okay.
And that was it.
To take over from like the warehouse you guys
To get rid of the
basically
other
had.
warehouse,
Yep.
we're going to keep the showroom by Woodward, and then we're going to just kind of obviously be able to grow our inventory because we had more space, and
Yep.
we're going to move some more of like our operations and like office stuff over there, and then
Yep.
just kind of have more strictly sales at where Platinum was at. And as we started doing it, long way to your point that you were kind of stating earlier, we realized like we'd already accidentally built this community of people over the the last decade or so that really prided themselves on being part of the community, right? Like they wore our hats, they wore our shirts, they came to our events. They took offense when like someone they knew didn't transact with us. Like they were literally like offended by it. I didn't even have to think about it or like talk about it. They were like, I can't believe that person bought that. I'm like, it's all right, like whatever, And so we kind of changed direction, and it's went from like, okay, this is going to be an office to like, I guess we're keeping this other rental warehouse and turning this into its own thing because this allows us to do more experiences and offer more experiences for the community. And it's been awesome. Like, not without its own set of challenges, obviously, but we have picked up people who, it's funny to me in a sense, didn't even know what Platinum was. And I'm like, oh man, how did we miss that? Like, you're a car person, you didn't know, but so they've become clients of Platinum, and obviously a lot of Platinum clients are members, and like we're able to give them experiences and do things. And we have people that use it as a co-working space. They're there all the time, and it's really turned into its own thing. And we started doing these like cars and coffees, and just thought they were going to kind of be like a thing. And
Yeah, it's a thing.
we have a guy that works for us that's a retired state trooper. And, I don't know if you know law enforcement guys. They're like very like color between the lines and like whatever. And I was talking to him, and he was like, it's going to get out of control. And I jokingly said to him, or half jokingly said to him, I'm like, cars and coffee works well when the cops show up. That's how like it did its job. Like it gets like out of control. And this last one we had, like a buddy of mine that's a Birmingham cop like pulls in the parking lot. And I walk over to him. He goes, is this you? I'm like, yeah. He goes, I should have known this was you. I'm like, well, come on in. And we gave him a tour. And I told him that story. I go, I told my guy, like, this is going to be a success. Like, when you guys get called. He goes, dude, you guys have cars in every parking lot up and down the street, not just your parking lot.
no.
I was like, oh shit, I didn't realize that. So like, something to work on, but it's pretty wild. We probably had 1,000 people there, and it was awesome.
Those are good problems to have.
Yeah, better than the other way.
1,000
there with
people
no
there.
Yeah.
Just on a Saturday morning.
Sunday morning, 9 to 11,
sorry.
and it was just pure chaos.
Wow. Dude, so let's talk about Erica for a second, if that's okay. So she is involved in the business. So my wife, Anna, is also involved in our businesses, right? That is awesome. And, it's kind of like sometimes it's hard to shut that off. And, you don't really shut it off, right? But it's like you have life, you have family, you guys have a family, we have a family. How do you guys navigate that? I mean, I know what we do, but I'm always interested to hear, because from the outside looking in, you guys do a very good job of that, but I'm sure it's intentional and it's not necessarily easy, even if it looks that way.
I think that all starts at the beginning. Like pre-business, like I think you just make a commitment to one another that you're not going to let things fester or linger, and like problems need to be addressed and nothing's personal kind of thing. Like we're 17 years together, 12 years married. We've never gone to bed angry. It's like what I like to say. Like that might mean we're up pretty late, but we're going to sort it out, like whatever it is. And the toughest thing with that, and I know you and Anna probably encounter this too, right, is just being able to hold each other accountable, but not taking that personally, right? Like, I'm sure you make mistakes. I'm sure Anna makes mistakes. I make plenty of mistakes. Erica doesn't make as many mistakes, but it's being able to have those conversations and realize like that it's a productive conversation and not an attack.
Yeah.
And that respecting each other's boundaries, and like when you have a partner, whether it's on a sports team or in a marriage or a business, like you got to trust that that person's doing the best they can do. Like they're never intentionally trying to sabotage something or mess something up, and that mistakes happen. And how do you go from it? I've never been one to really get caught up on the mistake, if that makes sense. I'm like, all right, well, that's in the past. Like, how do we not do it again? Like, what do we do to grow from it? And you get to a point in business, and I'm sure you're well past this as well. Like, you start up and like you have your struggles and you're growing, and those come with a separate set of struggles, and you kind of finally hit your stride, and then you start seeing problems that you never knew you had, right? Or like could have, like. And
there's always challenges and problems. They change, but they're always there.
And so as you grow together, being able to solve those together, and not saying that you won't go toe to toe on issues that you're both passionate about or disagree upon, but like being able to like work through that and find a resolution, that's always been of utmost importance. And I think like a lot of people will tell you, and I'm sure you get this too, like I don't know how you work with your wife, or like I couldn't do that. I would argue that a lot of those people, not to generalize, but probably also don't work together as co-parents or something. Like I think if you can understand that you're both entitled to an opinion or whatever, and it might not be the same, but then talk through those things. Like you've got 2 girls, I've got 3 girls. Yeah. Mine are a little older. We're starting to encounter different circumstances, and like for me, I'm like, holy shit, like this is a real thing. Like this is what's happening. And Erica's obviously a woman, so she's like, oh yeah, this is just part of the process.
You have a brother. Do you have any sisters? Or
no sisters. So
okay. I have 3 brothers too, so I'm learning on the go.
It's funny. My mom had 2 brothers.
Okay.
And then she had 2 sons, and now she's got 4 granddaughters. And so it was just nothing that she had ever expected. She was the opposite. She was always around men. So like, she loves her granddaughters, but it's a different thing, right? Like she always says it to me. She's like, I don't even know what to do. And I'm like, yeah, well, nobody does. And that's why you figure it out.
That's right. I think, for me, like between, working with Anna, I love it. It does come with its because I'm like always like at times she'll have to tell me like, hey, can you put your task list away, for a moment, and let's focus on this with the kids present, or whatever. Yeah. And I've got much better at that, but I'm still not like I'm not perfect, or I'm so like, I'm kind of like, I want to get my stuff complete. And I do that 6 days of the week. And on the seventh day, I'm a little more free on that most of the time. But there's sometimes on it, she's like, hey, can you just like, can you not get all that done before you're present, like on this day? And so she'll check me on that sometimes. And at the same time, she's very like understanding and flexible with like how I operate, which I think is something that I needed, in a partner. But I've really learned a lot about, I think, how to lead, specifically like she'll call me out, like, which I think is important. Like you kind of said it, like you might not agree on everything, or there might be like something that you butt heads on or something. But she's like, man, like, because I can be intense, and like I
think most
like,
successful leaders
I'm
can be.
very like, I wish I could be more like Syed, or at least what I like. You're always so like, you just seem relaxed. Like, you kind of just go with the flow. You make good decisions. You're confident in what you like, but you're like not gonna get like frazzled. Is what I see, and it's like, I don't get very frazzled, but I'll get like super like intense, right? And what's helped me with that though is my relationship with Anna, and her kind of like calling that, like, hey, like, we can go through this. You could flip your tone a little bit on that, or like, hey, why don't you start by telling that person, like, hey, how's your day going, before you just like jump right in on that, like, so stuff like that. And I think having two girls like has not softened me up, but kind of moved me along on like, hey, like, you need to work on the nuances to how you approach some of this stuff. You can still be just as effective and get your stuff done, and probably move even in a more swift manner compared to when you were younger. You just come in and maybe like just like run things to the ground to get it done, and in the process of that, maybe burn a relationship, damage a relationship with someone, make someone quit, when they could have been capable of working out. Like, so those are just things that I feel like, us being together almost a decade, and, now having two little girls, like, I don't know if it's God working on me on that, or just like that life experience, but it's something that I'm taking away, and I know I'm not perfect on it, but hopefully I'm bringing it into the workplace and becoming a more well-rounded leader, I guess. So,
I agree with you 100%. Like, there needs to kind of almost be that yin and yang, and we're both fortunate to have it. It's funny, I was listening to a lot of the stuff that you said about yourself, and a lot of that reminds me more of Erica than me. Like, she may argue that I'm almost like too laid back. We literally had a conversation around that this morning, and you either grow up and you're just like the situation you grow up in, or you change a little bit. And I don't know how much you know about like Indian culture or whatever, but like they tend to be like 0 to 100. And so I grew up around a lot of like people that were really fired up about a lot of things.
Okay.
And I was just, for me, I never got it. I was just like, I don't know, is it really worth it, kind of thing. And everyone's different. Like you and Erica, like Erica will get like worked up about stuff, and I end up being like the end on that relationship where I'm like, hey, like, does it really matter? Like, just focus on the result we want, and like there's no reason to get fired up. And that's worked for us. But having that passion and then having that calmness, like it's hard to have both. And that's why sometimes like multiple people make the total perfect piece of the pie, or whatever you want to call it.
I think that's, whether it's a marriage or a partnership or something, like, bringing different things to the table and becoming better together is like, that's the goal of any partnership, right? So,
we were talking about like parenting, and I think of, so I grew up, again, my parents were both immigrants, and like, we grew up in like spankings were okay and stuff. And like, I remember how like things were, things were dealt with at the house. Right now it's funny. Like we'll be at my parents' house and I'll have to talk to like my kids about something. And my conversations with my daughters, like my voice doesn't even change. And I'm like, Sophia, can I like talk to you for a second? She's already upset because she knows she's getting a talking to. my dad will come like put his arm on my shoulder and be like, you got to really take it easy on her. And I'm like, what? Are you serious right now? Like, is this really a conversation that's happening? But you know,
like, where was that?
I'm like, where was the taking it easy part? But it all, I'm a big believer, and it all turns you into who you are, right? Like life experiences are what make you.
Yeah.
Just different experiences have different impacts on people.
Yeah.
So
Let's switch it up a little bit. We've both done 75 hard a couple times. I've completed 3 times. I think you said you've completed twice.
Yep.
I don't know. Did I intro you to the program, or you knew about it already, or?
So I've known Andy for
Since before I
probably
I knew
over
Andy,
10
yeah.
years now.
Yeah.
Like I knew him when he bought his first Gallardo and came on Gold Rush Rally, and he bought it from a friend of mine who had a dealership in St. Louis at the time.
Yeah.
And honestly, I don't think anyone knew Andy. Like he was just a guy who like showed up to do the rally, and I just thought he was a cool guy, and we had this mutual friend. And like watching you or you watching me, like watching him grow has been incredible. Like from just a guy who was in the supplement business to what he is now, and how many people like he's had an impact on. It's like truly pretty special. So I knew what it was, but you were definitely the first person I knew that did it. And I remember kind of being inspired by that. And then, we're going back to like adversities in business. We, a few years ago, had an employee that we found out had embezzled a bunch of money. And like in that moment, like I had been talking about doing it, and I just decided like, you know what, I'm going to do this right now.
Yeah.
Like literally like kind of the day after we had learned that. And I remember Erica being like, now? Like you're going to do this now?
Yeah.
And more than anything, I don't want to call it a distraction, but I just needed something else to focus on, like something to put like good energy towards instead of like letting like the bad energy in.
Yeah.
And, I've done it twice. I started it a third time and failed it a little more than halfway through. I don't know if you felt that way too. Like A, it was like kind of proving it to yourself, and B, like it was just like powering through anything. We were dealing with prosecuting this guy on felony embezzlement.
Yeah.
And I was
Not
traveling.
a fun thing.
No, I mean, listen, especially now when you have kids, like nothing, thank God, ever happened, but you never know what someone's going to do when you're prosecuting them for stealing and they're facing consequences. Like, you don't know what's going to come of that. And then you're responsible for a family. You have things that pop up in your head. You're like, should I just let this go? Like, is this really worth it? Like, is it, like compromising my family's safety? Like, and so we're doing that, and I was still traveling more for work. And I remember I was in Scottsdale. This is when COVID was still more fresh, and I got COVID, and I wish I hadn't called Delta, but I got stuck in Scottsdale because I called Delta. I'm like, what are the rules? Like I just tested.
I think we talked about that.
We
maybe
may
you
have.
were back.
Dude,
Keep
all
going.
I remember is like I literally ended up having to stay at a hotel in Scottsdale for a week. I was down there for the. And then she's like, all right, well, you're going to stop the 75 hard? I'm like, no. And I remember just like being in a hotel room by myself in Scottsdale. And the only time I left the hotel room was to basically go and do 2 outdoor workouts a day because I couldn't go into the gym. This is when we were all like quarantining and trying to like, figure it out. And I just remember going through that and like crossing the finish line, and I guess not even like thinking as much of it. And then Erica like did this like super amazing post about it, and she was just like, when the world like hit you in the face, like you chose to like keep going. And it was just like, I guess it's just the way I was built, and I didn't even realize it was happening. But I remember reaching out to Andy and being like, hey, thanks for this. Like it gave me something to do to distract myself with. The other stuff just kind of became secondary. Primary was just doing what I had to do, and the other stuff I didn't necessarily have control over. It was there and it was happening, but it wasn't eating away at me in any way.
I think, doing that I mean, it's a great program. I think anything that pushes you to be consistent and show discipline and do things when they're not convenient, but necessary to make progress, right?
Sure.
It's like good lessons, because it's like for me, it's like people are like, oh, what are your biggest takeaway from this? It's like things that I already knew, but it's just another. Well, one, I think it helps you with scheduling and like shows me that I could do more. And I've even taken like the phase 1 schedule from that program and implemented it into how I operate daily. And I've done that since 2021. So I did the phase 1. It was probably in 2020, like late 2020. We started our second portfolio company. And I just kind of, when I got done with phase 1, I just stayed on this plan of, I call them 5 daily igniters that I do, but then 3 additional critical tasks. And I've been doing that. It's now like past the middle
take
of
a cold
20.
shower every day?
I don't do that every day, but I implemented that, and it's just a part of my structure on how I, because I'm CEO of one of our companies, I'm not running the day-to-day on the other one, so I'll focus my day on what I got to do for the company that I'm CEO of, and then I throw in 3 additional tasks that are things that I'm working on with the other operators of the other companies, and that's just how I go about it, and it's worked well, up to this point. So there's some tactical things like that, but for me, it's like over and over in life, like wherever, what I found to be true is like where you do something with the right intent, where you're consistent about it, and you stick with it even when you don't feel like doing it, amazing things can happen. Whether that's sports, business, fitness, and this just really presses down on that point. Like you see the physical transformation and just some of like the confidence that you can get things done even when things aren't optimal. Like it's just it really pushes you along that path, I think. So that's why I think it's a good program for anybody.
Yeah, I mean, the right intent, like I like that you said that. I like that it's called a mental toughness thing because people are always like, oh, you're doing a workout thing.
It's not a challenge. Yeah.
I'm like, I mean, dude, I don't look like a guy who does a workout thing, right? Like it's not, I've never gone into it trying to get jacked or anything like that. And I think intent is an interesting thing to say because what I find a lot of people convince themselves they can't do is just be intentional on whatever, right? Like I've got people, so 2 of the 3 times I've done 75 hard, I've started it with a friend.
Yeah.
And 2 out of 2 times, the friend didn't make it. And that just made it even more that I had to. Mm-hmm. Like that's just the way I was built. I was like, damn it, now I really have to get this done. Like it's like a proving that it can happen. And I think whether it's business, whether it's a fitness program or a mental toughness program or marriage or whatever, like you can let things get in your way and there's going to be plenty, right? Like we talked about, like you're always going to face things in business. You're always going to face things in life.
Correct.
You're always going to come up and you can either have the approach that it's overwhelming and not fair or whatever, or, I choose to just go at it with the approach of like, well, it's just a part of the process and how do you keep going and what do you do? And then if you ever have something you can't, in my case, like in that third 75 hard, like I remember texting Andy, I was telling you this right before we started, like I wasn't even mad that I was sick. Like I was just pissed that it got in the way of me finishing. And like he had to literally be like, no, dude, like I got knocked out by that same thing. And like, sometimes you just can't. And that's an important reminder too. Like there are things that can be, but they're not as frequent or as often as people think they are. You encounter people daily that always are having a bad day or something's always going wrong and it's always someone else's fault.
Yeah. And that's what gets, clearly you excel at this because, you've built some amazing businesses and, have a beautiful family and, all these things require commitment, consistency, showing up at less than optimal times, working through things that come up in everyday life and like it's just you want anything to be built, last, and be something special. And if you expect the sun to be shining all the time, it's just not going to happen.
Especially not in Michigan.
Not in Michigan. So maybe in Cali or Arizona, but even there. So that was really well said, man. It was well said, and I think it's cool that you've done that a couple of times. I had the same thing. I failed on a phase 1, and we talked about it a little bit before we recorded, but Anna was pregnant, and she's like, look, like I'm going to be due here sometime this month. Like, you can't be, like, it was during COVID. Like she's like, you can, and we both had it, and I kept going for 2 or 3 days. She's like, look, if you end up in the hospital and I go, into, have to go in, you can't be there. Like, and it's because you kept doing this, like, we're going to have a problem. And I'm like, I felt horrible. But
You're
between
like,
that
seems
and
reasonable, yeah.
I'm like, yeah, that is reasonable. I'm gonna bow out, and I'll do phase 1, when I'm feeling better, and probably after the baby comes. And I did, but that was my time where I didn't make it through. But yeah, it's like, I know people, like, I can tell you done it the right way, because of some of the stuff you said, and it's not a challenge. It's more of it's a program, and it's it's really a lifestyle, whether you do it all the time or not. Like, hopefully, if you're doing that, you pick up hopefully someone doesn't do it and then just go right back to completely whatever they're doing. Like, even if it's like, okay, like, you want to go have ice cream or something on the weekend with your, like, you don't have to implement the full program at all times. But hopefully you take some of those things and continue them on, whether it's the reading or, tasks for a day, or, just something that you're picking up within that program and implementing it into life. And it's like, I know some people that go through this, and, this is a good synopsis on life and business and everything, like sports and who excels and who doesn't. But, like, there's no one, like, in a program like this, there's an integrity standpoint and an intent, and the intent is everything in this. Like, that's where the learning and growth comes from. It's in the intent. And it's like, in life and in this program and in a lot of things, like, there's a way to do stuff and do it the right way to build something that's foundationally can grow and evolve and thrive. You can also cut corners on it. And, no one might be there to tell you, like, in the moment that, oh, you didn't do it right, or, you might still get some claps or something like that, but nothing's really going to change, and you're going to know yourself if you're cutting those corners. And that stuff catches up with people at some point, specifically, I think, within business. It's like, we're in a sales-driven business. You are too, but you say, hey, we're not focused on sales, but
we're focused. I should clarify that, not to interrupt you. We're focused on sales. It is a sales organization, but we're focused on,
but not pushing it in the wrong way.
We're focused on, like, selling the client from the standpoint of, like, earning their trust that we're actually looking out for them, rather than just shoving a product down their throat.
And there you go. It's like, hey, like, so part of the sale, like, okay, well, we need to figure out how to do that we got to get a good pipeline of people coming in, viewing our stuff online, like, being like, we got to be talking to enough people to like run a business on this. But if we start cutting corners on that stuff, well, it's going to ruin the experience. It's going to drop the referrals that we get, like, all this other stuff. So it's like, and that's the intent portion. So it's like, do it with the right intent. Like, don't cut that corner on this thing. Like, go around it, do it the right way, even if it's harder, even if it means, I didn't eat that fry, on the program, or, I didn't make that extra, $1,000 in margin on this program or on this sale, but it was the right thing to do in this situation. Or, this sale we needed to not do because we weren't going to deliver on it, or they had a better deal over there. For us, it's more of like, we'll look at a project and you got to figure out a way to deliver it. If you can't come to the right price point on that, like, you wouldn't want to cut into that price point too much and then deliver a bad product to the client. Second you do that, like, everything is going to be ruined. So, hey, sometimes that might mean that you don't win the project, or you don't win it up front. You got to be okay with that.
It's all part of the process, right? Like, there's that Michael Jordan quote. I don't know it exactly, but something along the lines of, like, I've missed X number of shots. I've been trusted with this many game-winning shots, and I've failed. Mm-hmm. We've lost this many games. And he's considered to be, by many, the greatest alive, right? Or, like, I read the Kobe book, and one of the 75 Hards was one of the books I read, and what you realize with those guys, like tying it kind of to life and to 75 Hard, is it's consistency. And, you know, I have to like teach this to Sophia more than my other two because they're younger. Like a lot of times, like the thing that you want is only going to happen by doing the things that you don't necessarily want.
Yeah.
Like you see people,
Absolutely.
you know, work hard or train hard, not where people see them, right?
Yeah.
Like you read the story, like Kobe's was pretty wild to me. Like as a high school kid, like he was in the gym like at 5 a.m. before school. Like, I mean, dude, what high school kid do you know that does anything that hard, right? Well, that's why he ended up being Kobe Bryant, right? And nobody until much later in his life really knew that. Like he just looked like a guy who made it. But like those two examples, like the Kobe and the Michael, like a lot of people will say they were just extremely talented and gifted, and they may have been, but you know, I think really what got them to their level of greatness wasn't their natural ability as much as their just tenacious desire to outwork and out hustle anyone else. And just that discipline and that intentional behavior is what just kind of resulted in the success.
Well, that's you know, I've heard that said. This is not like me coming up with this. I've heard it said, but it's like a lot of success is built in the unseen hours. And I think that's a big part of that program or what you're talking about with Kobe. Or like, I know that to be true, you know, and it's like, it's not so much, you know, when you're in the moment of like, you kind of talked about an example of it. Like, well, you know, you didn't just roll out these cars and coffees where 1,000 people show up. It's a product of all these different things over conversation, right? And then the timing of this building coming together and a vision you had, and that kind of adjusting as it came to fruition, because you weren't initially, there just wasn't this master plan to have that, right? But it's like most of that work was done behind the scenes, you know, and over what a decade plus of time. It was like compounding thing. So the program definitely teaches you that, because no one's going to know, you know, if you read 9.5 pages instead of 10.
Right.
Or you skimmed through the last page instead of actually reading it and
missed the last 4 ounces of water.
You didn't measure, you know, oh, I think I did my water today, so I'm going to check it off first, knowing that you did it. And again, like when I'm on program, like if I'm doing that, like I'm doing that, I don't measure my water like every day. I don't usually drink a ton out of plastic bottles, but I have a general idea of what I'm drinking. I know it's probably, you know, I'm there, but like I'm not regimented about like measuring every single thing. Well, when I'm doing that, I am, because it's like, okay, I just want to make sure that I'm crossed the line. I never want to be at the line and just like step on I got to go around it in all aspects of everything. So it's like,
it's obvious watching your life. That's how you roll, right? I remember when I met you and you had just kind of started seeing, I shouldn't say just started, you obviously had seen success. You were buying a Lamborghini and stuff, but even from that point on to where you've built your businesses now, like I use you as an example to a lot of my friends in the mortgage business, like some of whom you know, like, you know, you've really continued with that, at least it appears you've continued with that approach to just always making sure you over deliver. You know, instead of doing a gallon, you do like a little more than a gallon just to be safe. And like, maybe I drop some, you know, like, well, you don't ever want to
like last night, like I know I'm over 100 ounces. So like you know, if I get over 100 ounces in a day, but if I'm on program, like, it's not like, oh yeah, I think I'm at 128. So let's check. Like, no, cause that would like, if I'm going to do something and commit to a certain way, whether it's a project with a client or a workout, you know, program, or, you know, mental toughness like once it's committed to in a certain way, it's got to be done that way. If it's, you know, need to do 10 sales meetings and, you know, we need to have X amount of, you know, things that come out of it. And if it doesn't, like, we got to work on our conversion, you know, ratio, then that's what it is. Like, you just like, but it's like, hey, like, you can't make proper evaluations on how to tweak things if it's like, get someone, it's like, oh, you know, I did 10 meetings this week and nothing came of it. Like, well, you know, was it done with the right intent? You got to, you know, if it's done with the right intent, then it's just a skill thing. Like, got to work on the coaching, and probably more reps will build success, in that, because they just got to do it more. But if you're cutting corners on what those are supposed to be, it's like, hey, I made 30 calls, but like you make the call and then you hang up for the
right. Yeah, if you're just getting the dial to hit the dial,
anything.
then yeah.
As soon as you're doing it just to do it without actually like attempting, it doesn't even matter if you convert. What matters is that your intent is to do that and then to be learning from the failures, because we're all going to fail.
When you learn from the failures, you kind of develop this confidence, and again, it just goes back to one of these things that like things just appear to become easier, and it's not, they don't happen by mistake, right? Like that just becomes more natural. Like I have guys that work with us that are like, well, like it's just so conversational when you talk to people. I go, well, that's because it's really a conversation. Like there isn't like,
that's the focus.
Like the focus isn't on like, what am I going to get like for me? It's like, what am I helping this person understand? Because by helping that person understand it, then the next person that calls them or gets in front of them that is just trying to shove something in their face, they're going to be like, oh.
You're going to remember that.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to switch it up. Last question for you.
Let's go.
Favorite car and why?
Somebody asked me this at dinner last night.
Okay, so it's fresh in your mind.
Yeah, well, I'm going to answer it, but I'm going to be two different answers because I think you may be asking it a different way, because I surprised the guy last night. Okay. Like I have a car that's my number one car of all time and will always be my number one car of all time.
Okay.
And that is a 2003 BMW M5.
Okay.
And I have had at least one at any given point for the last 20 years. And to me, it's got 4 doors, it's got 400 horsepower, it's got 5 seats, a real trunk, it's a stick. And, at the time that I got the first one, like I was, I could only have one car, and it was the ultimate car. It did everything. And, back in the day, BMW used to be the ultimate driving machine. I actually do believe that to be true for that period of time. And for that, like, as only one car, which wasn't exactly how you phrased your question, but the guy last night goes, if you could only have one car, I'm like, I still think that's the best car. Now, my favorite car, like, is the Carrera GT.
Yeah.
And it's a car, I jokingly say, that keeps running away from me. The first one we ever had in inventory, we were pregnant with Sophia, and it was $330,000 at the time, which was like all the money in the world.
What's it now?
About $1.8 million. So every time that I'm like, all right, I'm about to do it, I'm like, shit. Like they take their next jump, and I'm like, it's probably
like Erica. See, we should have done it back.
Yeah, I'm like, we should have just lived in it while you were pregnant with Sophia, because we'd be doing great. But yeah, the Carrera GT is, and both of them, the one thing they have in common is they're just so visceral and they're so involved, and there's really no computers. Like you ultimately are doing the driving, and if you're not, then you're in big trouble. Like so many of these modern cars are capable of so much.
Yeah,
but
they're more built for Aaron.
Yeah, well, Aaron's got some pretty impressive cars, and he's had a lot of great ones.
Yeah, but if it requires too much skill, I'd probably break it. So
it's better you break it than it break you. Like that's the old cars. That's the difference. Like like the Carrera GT is like so famous for like Paul Walker dying in that car accident, right? Like,
I didn't realize that's the car he was.
Yeah, that was the car, and a lot of people call it a widowmaker, and it's interesting. I don't know that it's necessarily the hardest car in the world to drive, like if you understand what you're doing, but it's not forgiving. So like it requires a level of respect that a lot of modern cars are a lot more forgiving.
Got it. Interesting.
What's yours?
Man, I mean, I'll tell you, the car that I have my eye on the most still is the SF90. And
I've heard they're great.
Yeah. Yeah. You have some experience driving those. So
yeah.
Do you still driving that a lot? Or did you guys sell that now?
It's got like 8,000 miles on it. It's funny.
It's a sharp car.
You should drive it sometime. It's wild. it's the opposite of the Carrera GT. Like
that's like your daily though in the summer.
Actually, it's more my daily in the not great weather, which is kind of ironic to most people. But
to
the
me,
old cars,
I'll see it out. Like I'll be in Birmingham, and it's like a day I'm driving my truck because it's raining or something. And I'm like, man, I would never have that thing in the rain.
Well, my older cars, like we've got a lot of young kids that work for us. It's like part of the way the business goes, and I love them. We have the best team we've ever had, but they think it's absolutely insane. They're like, you only drive this old stuff when it's like nice. I'm like, well, dude, the old cars, I don't want them to rust and stuff. Like it's hard to go find another perfect 20-year-old car And the new stuff, like, I love it.
Yeah.
But I'm like, it's brand new. Like, So I pulled into Cawley last year for a service, and it was on winter tires. And I remember their guys just being like, what?
You got us on winter tires. Oh, that's funny. Yeah, I'd say that, a Spider SF. What is it? There's like the, it's like, you're going to know the version.
Gotta get you a black and yellow one.
XX something version or something like that.
Yep.
What is that one?
So Ferrari's XX cars are kind of their craziest cars.
It's wild.
Yeah.
That's like
I haven't even seen one in person. I know one of our clients is supposed to be getting his soon. He races for Ferrari, so he's kind of one of these guys that gets whatever he wants. But anything they make that's XX, it's just like turned up to a 13.
to another level.
Yeah.
Yeah, so probably that. And then I think their SUVs are pretty cool too. There's some specs that are pretty cool. So, but haven't seen.
I could see you driving a Parasang. I could see you in a black Parasang with yellow seats and some yellow calipers.
That's I've seen a couple. The one like that what's that Instagram account? Venom Black or something like that.
Yep.
They put out some cool. I don't know. Are they actually doing those, or is that AI? Or I don't even know.
It's probably a little bit of both. There's some companies, like I have a friend, a newer friend of mine that I met. He lives in New York that just got a black one that I think he's doing a wide body kit and some wheels on. So
Gotcha.
It's gonna end up looking like
whatever they did with that. I'm like, all right, that's pretty cool.
So that's what I'll keep my eyes open for you.
Yeah. So those are probably two that are, but that SF90 is like up on my board, vision board. So, I think we're working on crossing our next big igniter. Those are like our Super Bowls.
Yeah.
And we'll see. But, when that happens, like that's a goal to pull the trigger on that, at that point. So
it's been cool to watch you cross off the goals that you have. I remember the post of when you got I didn't even know the story, but when you got the Huracan and you made that social media post about that moment in your life where you changed directions and the way it all went. But I'm super, as a friend, I'm super excited to see you keep having these wins.
Well, likewise, I love what you guys are doing. I got to get over to the garage more. I've been a couple times. I've been to a Cars and Coffee event. But I appreciate you guys held my car basically all winter. We were working on some stuff, so thank you for that. But I got to get over there a little bit more. We have a couple clients that I think are members, and a couple of our guys.
I've seen Jamie over there. I was going to say,
I've seen Jamie. We'll go over there right after this, but he's in there a little bit, and I think they even did a meeting out of there a couple weeks ago.
I've seen him a few times. I walk around the corner. I was like, oh.
It's cool, man. So. Love supporting you guys and what you're doing. Thanks for coming in. Everybody, thanks for tuning in. You can find Syed at Platinum Motor Cars, at Luckiest Dude Around, and then there's
Out of
Office Garage. And you should check. I mean, if you like cars, great things to check out. And you really got to see what they built. The community is special. So thank you. Please share this, like, subscribe. If you could, leave us a rating. Have a great day.